There's something about settling into a new home that stirs up old memories you didn't expect to feel again. Maybe it's the scent of fresh paint drifting through the hallways, mixing with the faint echoes of years already lived there. Or maybe it's the way sunlight sneaks through dusty windows, making you feel like you're finally carving out your own corner of the world. I'd spent decades dreaming of a place where I could slow down, roll up my sleeves, and maybe, just maybe, hear birdsong instead of sirens. That dream eventually led me to Henderson Place, a charming, if battered, old house sitting at the far end of Maple Ridge Drive. I saw potential in its creaky floors and weathered siding. What I didn't see coming was the woman who would try to turn my peaceful haven into a war zone. The frantic voice on the 911 recording would later become evidence in my favor. "Someone has changed the locks on community property," she shrieked into her phone while standing directly on my front porch. "I demand you send officers immediately." But what HOA President Linda Garrison didn't know was that I was listening from my window, and I had a very different call to make. One that would turn her power trip into her worst nightmare. I had purchased the old Henderson Place just 3 weeks earlier. It sat quietly at the edge of where Sunset Meadows HOA territory ended, a borderline that most people wouldn't care about, but one Linda refused to acknowledge. The previous owner had lost the house to foreclosure, and I'd scooped it up for a fair price, fully aware it would need elbow grease and patience. I was ready for squeaky pipes and crooked shelves. What I wasn't ready for was Linda Garrison showing up unannounced that Tuesday morning, holding what looked like an old brass key. "Excuse me," she said, her tone so clipped and rehearsed, it could have come straight from a training video on passive aggression. "I'm here for the monthly inspection." She wore a navy blazer sharp enough to cut glass, pinned with an HOA president emblem that gleamed like a sheriff's badge. Her blonde hair was shellacked into a style that probably hadn't shifted since the Reagan administration, and her smile was as warm as a frosted window. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said calmly, setting down my paint roller. "This is private property. I bought it 3 weeks ago." Her expression faltered only for a moment before she recovered. "Young man," she said with exaggerated patience, "this house is part of Sunset Meadows HOA. We have inspection rights to all properties within our jurisdiction." She lifted her key as if it were the Excalibur of suburbia. "This master key gives me access to every home in our community." I kept my tone steady, though part of me wanted to laugh. "Ma'am, I've got all my closing documents inside. This home is outside your HOA boundaries. The survey clearly shows that." "I don't need to see any documents," she said, dismissively waving a manicured hand. "I've been HOA president for 8 years. I know every property we manage." Then she stepped forward, raising the key like she was about to knight me with it. "Ma'am, please step back," I said, firmer this time. "This is private property, and you do not have permission to enter." Her face flushed beet red. "How dare you speak to me that way? Do you have any idea who I am?" "Linda Garrison, HOA president," I replied. "But that title doesn't give you authority over my property." She jabbed a finger at me. "You'll be hearing from our legal team. Nobody defies the HOA." Then she spun around, marched to her white Lexus, and slammed the door so hard her parking decal fluttered. I went back to painting, thinking maybe that was the end of it. Some people just need to puff up their feathers before retreating. But Linda wasn't just anyone. People like her don't back down, they double down. Not an hour later, I heard commotion again. I looked out the window and saw Linda's Lexus parked at the curb. Her figure was hunched over my front door, furiously jamming that same brass key into the lock as if she were trying to crack a safe. I opened the door before she could break something. "Can I help you with something, Mrs. Garrison?" She jumped back like she'd been caught red-handed. "You changed the locks?" she barked. "That's against HOA bylaws. You can't do that without board approval." "Again, this property isn't part of your HOA," I reminded her. "And these are the same locks the house had when I bought it." Her eyes narrowed into slits. "You're lying. That key has opened this door for years. The previous owner respected the rules. He also lost the house in foreclosure," I replied. "Whatever arrangement you had ended with the bank." She snapped open her phone. "Fine. If you want to play games, we'll do it the hard way." Then she dialed 911, launching into the performance of her life. Yes, hello. I need Thepolis here immediately. There's a squatter in one of our HOA properties. He's changed the locks and is refusing to leave. I'm the HOA president. Please hurry, he seems unstable. I shook my head. It was a theater, plain and simple, but I had a better act ready, one that involved someone who wouldn't let the truth get buried under brass keys and bad intentions. I stepped inside and made my own call to someone I trusted. County Dispatch, Sarah speaking. Hey, Sarah, it's David Morrison. I think we might have a situation out here. Sarah had been a friend since high school. She'd been dispatching for years and knew the area better than anyone. David, you finally bought that fixer-upper, huh? What's going on? I've got an HOA president claiming I'm squatting in my own home. I think she just called in a false report. Linda Garrison? Sarah asked instantly, already sounding tired. White Lexus, hair sprayed into place with industrial adhesive. That's her. I heard typing on her end. You're at 4728916 Maple Ridge, right? I'm pulling the parcel now. Yep, you're right. That address has never been within any HOA boundaries. Not even decades ago. She says she's got some master key added. Like that gives her authority to break into my house. She just called it in, Sarah replied. Units are already on their way. Don't worry, I'll update the notes and make sure the responding officers know exactly what they're walking into. Thanks, Sarah. Oh, and David? Get some security cameras. Something tells me she's not done with you yet. I ended my call just as Linda ended hers. She stood at the end of my driveway, arms crossed, wearing the smug look of someone convinced her enemy was about to be hauled off in handcuffs. I gathered my documents, closing papers, the deed, the survey, and waited on the porch. Within minutes, 2 cruisers pulled up. Linda bolted toward them, pointing at me like she was identifying a suspect in a lineup. That man is trespassing, she declared, but the officers didn't even glance at her. They walked straight to me. Mr. Morrison? Officer Johnson asked. That's me, I replied, handing over the papers. Appreciate you coming out. Linda's jaw fell open. Wait, why are you talking to him? He's the squatter. Ma'am, step back while we assess the situation, Officer Pike said, calm but firm. But I'm Linda Garrison, HOA president. We're aware, Mrs. Garrison, Johnson said, flipping through my documents. But this property isn't under your jurisdiction. I explained everything, the timeline, her intrusion attempts, the boundary line. Johnson pointed to the survey. This line here, that's your HOA's property boundary. HOA territory doesn't start for another 50 feet. That's impossible. Linda huffed. I have a master key. Do you have any documentation showing HOA authority over this property? Pike asked. I don't need it. I've been president for 8 years. That's not how property rights work, Johnson said plainly. Having a key doesn't grant you legal access. Linda's voice sharpened into a shrill edge. I don't need his permission. This is HOA property. No, ma'am, Johnson replied. According to these records, this property is not under your control. You're trespassing, and you filed a false 911 report. That's a serious offense. Linda's face drained of color. But I'm the HOA president. That doesn't make you law enforcement, Pike said. Now, either leave peacefully or face arrest. She sputtered threats and half-finished declarations. But eventually, she climbed into her Lexus, muttering that this wasn't over. 3 days later, I received a letter from Sunset Meadows, HOA, instead of the threats Linda had promised. It was a formal acknowledgement. 472809116 Maple Ridge Drive was and had always been outside their control. I had it framed and hung beside the front door, a symbol of sanity triumphing over delusion. At the next HOA meeting, the truth surfaced. Residents were furious. Questions flew. How many homes had Linda trespassed into? How long had she abused that key? The vote was swift and unanimous. Linda was removed as HOA president. But her downfall didn't stop there. A board audit uncovered misuse of HOA funds and violations of state law. The judge fined her $150 and ordered full restitution. As the verdict was read, Linda sat motionless, her imagined kingdom reduced to ash. And me? I sat on my porch, sipping coffee, listening to the wind in the trees, knowing the only key that mattered was the one in my pocket. If you've ever tangled with an overreaching HOA or just love seeing justice served the right way, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if this story smiled at you, a like lets us know you want more. There are plenty more keys, cars, and comebacks to come.